Welcome to the 2020 Global Peace Film Festival interviews. My name is Kelly Devine. I'm the Artistic Director. Please join me and Nina Strike, Executive Director, in welcoming Ricky Ott with the film Concerned Citizen Civics in Action. Be sure to check out the Global Peace Film Festival website to find out how to watch this film and learn about all of our other festival events by visiting peacefilmfest.org. The festival begins September 21st and ends October the 4th. Tickets are on sale now, and now let's begin the interview.
Welcome, Ricky. It's so good to have you with us from your tent in the Pacific Northwest. Can you tell us a little bit about the film?
Yes, I would be happy to. So this is a film that's intergenerational. I mean, I'm an older person. There are lots of younger people in this film. It's about how to engage and inspire people to help make a difference. But I'm sort of the frame, the hub character, where it's modeled on my life, but who I interact with, then they become their own little spinning vortices of change. And you know, I didn't intentionally set out to do any of this. It's like taking one step after another. So that makes it all the more doable for anybody to realize how their own lives can make a difference and help inspire other people to wake up and engage and be part of the change.
That's the spirit that we try to engender in this festival. So that's tremendous to hear. So why do you think this particular story, and in the way that you and director Bo Bordart tell the story, why do you think it's important to tell now?
It's very important right now because it engages with two very timely issues. One issue is our transition off of oil, and oil dependency. So everything that comes with oil, including actually this sort of a power structure that we have right now, which is all very vertically integrated and power over people, instead of what I and a lot of people imagine as a true democracy, which is more decentralized and power is to the people. That's the idea. And how we affect change in different areas might look a little bit differently. But so it's about oil and about oil spills, because that is really about the Achilles heel of the oil industry. They have these horrible spills. And in that crisis is an opportunity for people to start standing in their power, finding their voice. And once people have found their voice, they never go back. It becomes a motivator for the rest of their lives. So that's one issue. The other issue is the other end of the oil spectrum, which is the climate crisis, climate chaos that is being wrought on our planet right now because of burning fossil fuels, essentially. And not only fossil fuels, but this is a problem. And the young people have found their voices at a very early age and have taken to streets, you know, have demanded change in schools. And frankly, the teachers weren't prepared for this. Civics is usually taught in 12th grade, 11th grade. There are people who are in 5th grade who are suing the federal government over their right to a future, basically, and wielding their constitutional rights very effectively. So, you know, when you're a teacher in school and you're suddenly being asked, well, how come people my age are suing the federal government? There really aren't courses for how to move ideas into action, how the court system works, how young people can actually use their constitutional rights, and other ways to effect meaningful societal change. That's what this course is. And it went from 1 hour to about, it's going to be about 3 weeks by the time I get through this latest overhaul of it. But it's teachable, it's online, and so those are the two sort of issues that are raised or framed.
So you mentioned towards the end there, your course. concerned citizen civics. But we'll
Ultimate Civics.
Very
Yeah.
good. Ultimate Civics. That's it. We'll get to that in a second. But first, I wanted to, in a previous conversation, you had mentioned that this was a 10-year journey. This film.
Oh my God.
What were some of the things that surprised you that you learned along the way of making the film, as opposed to just your activism and being out there?
Patience. So this film actually started, believe it or not, in the middle of the BP 2010 oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. I was down in the Gulf Coast communities as an activist from the Exxon Valdez oil spill, which had happened in Alaska 21 years earlier, which is also covered in this film. That was sort of my pivotal point in my own personal waking up, was the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and the 20 years I spent in my community, sort of like under the Bodhi tree, learning all the lessons of how to, what makes a community tick. When you want a community to do something, how do you engage in community change? Very interesting lessons. And when all of a sudden, boom, in the Gulf, the oil rig blows, and I said, whoa, I got to go down there, because everybody's going to repeat all the mistakes that we made in Alaska. And now I've learned so much. And sure enough, I was able to really apply a lot of the lessons. But in the midst of that, there's Bo Budar, and he hooks up with me, and he's filming something. Or I said, Bo, what are you doing? He says, what are you doing down here? I said, well, it's an oil spill. And Bo and I had worked in a previous collaboration, Oil on Ice. And Bo said, I don't know yet, but I know there's going to be a story in this. And that was the big lesson for me, actually, was that filmmakers all don't necessarily have to have a story. I ran into two filmmakers basically within 2 weeks, and they both didn't know what they were doing. And they both said, this is going to be a story. And I thought, oh, great, it's going to be a competing story. No, not at all. Films are like multiple books on the same subject. I mean, come on, everybody's got opinions and a slightly different angle of something. So where Bo took off on this story, as it evolved, it didn't evolve for a couple years. It took a while. I was only just starting the Ultimate Civics courses. And then when I began teaching students, Bo was like, oh, we have to get this footage. And slowly it became empowering from one generation, giving this knowledge and what you've learned and sharing it in a way that another generation can pick it up and apply it to meet their needs in this current in their current situation. I mean, generations change, things change, including the immediacy of different needs. And I was floored that this all came together in a film. I really was, because for a while I had to wrestle with my own, I guess I'd call them, they're not really insecurities, but it was my own ego. There's going to be a film made about me, about my work. I don't want that. I don't want everyone to put me on a pedestal and think, oh, well, she did it, so now that excuses them from doing the work. And so the teaching was a way to pass, and Bo's film brings this out beautifully, with its youth at the end that are all on fire. And these are the young people that are suing the federal or the state government over not protecting the climate for their generation. And it's this beautiful sort of passing the baton kind of story that is framed on two different issues, oil crises and really climate crises.
Well, and that brings me to another really important point, that the mission of the film festival, the way we try and curate all of our programming, is to provide either models or inspiration, or maybe a bit of both, so that people can take something back into their own personal lives, back into their communities. So if you could speak to what people could do, and I'm reminded of a recollection of watching the film, that it seemed to have occurred to you at some point in the film, that it was almost an epiphany, that for you to make the change that you needed to make in terms of protecting the environment, you had to steer towards the civics. And I just can't underline that enough. If you could kind of speak to why that was the connection that was important.
Oh, Yes, I can. I mean, you're right. I totally forgot to speak to that, but this is perfect way to do it. It's a perfect segue. Um, One of the lessons learned from the Exxon Valdez oil spill in my mind was that I tried all the systems. I tried Congress. We passed the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. I tried the, the executive branch with making the rules for these laws and trying to enforce these rules. And I did this at the state level as well, the state of Alaska. And then, you know, hello, no, it's not really working. What is going on? And then we were in court. Of course, we had a lawsuit, the fishermen, I was commercial fishing at the time, for lost fisheries. And then there was a civil rights, civil damages lawsuit for all the damages to fish and wildlife. And I had really no idea about all this legal part of an oil spill. And I also had really no idea how much the entire government and court systems were rigged by this sort of, it's like Wizard of Oz, the unseen curtain, you know, the curtain, don't look behind the curtain at who's pulling the levers of power. Well, it turned out who was pulling the levers of power was something called an artificial person manifesting as corporations. And I'm not saying all corporations are evil, for God's sakes. Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts are corporations, okay? Churches are corporations, cooperatives. It's a business model. But a few of them have been used to consolidate wealth and power over the people. So like the Exxon Mobils of the world, I mean, I'm in court against this $5 billion company, you know, come on. And I looked at, well, my first shock was, okay, this is wrong. Something happened here that I don't really know about. So when I was finishing my second book on the Exxon Valdez, Not One Drop, I really investigated artificial persons and corporate personhood and realized, oh my God, there's been a hijack here of our democracy. Corporations are supposed to have charter rights, not constitutional rights. So as the way this evolved, the next thing that happened was the BP oil disaster, then the Occupy camps. And so I went to the Occupy camps with this timeline intending to explain the evolution of corporate power through laws. And it was one of the most favorite teachings of the Occupy camps because it united everybody. And people realized that it's not just a climate crisis, it's not just a healthcare crisis, water crisis, whatever, always artificial persons were at the bottom of it, trying to make as much money, trying to profit over our needs, our human rights. And these were all young adults. They were even Iraq war vets. And I realized, wait a minute, how come these young people who are either in college or have recently graduated don't understand this? And I realized that this isn't taught. This isn't taught. And how can the basic operating instructions, which have been changed through common law decisions of ordinary legal proceedings that happen all the time, but occasionally there's landmark ones that really reset the landscape. How can this not be part of what we're learning in schools? I mean, Brown versus Board of Education, okay, but there's lots of other ones that undermined our democracy and, you know, at the same point as Brown versus Board elevated it. So how, then with the youth who are suing, I realized the time was absolutely ripe for these lessons because younger people were asking, how did they do that? How did somebody my age just sue the federal government? How does an 8-year-old sue the federal government? And so I mapped this out, and what was started as a 1-hour, literally back of the envelope presentation to 7 classes of middle school students from ages 6 to 8, ended up being this powerful teaching for them and for me. And those kids asked me, if you were our age, what would you do right now? At the end of this week of instruction, and it was an energy teach-in. And I thought a minute and I said, I would literally ask for a field trip and go pack the courthouse. This is going to be the first hearing, public hearing of this case. And the kids did that, and it became a life-changing experience for those kids. And for the judge, because the judge was thinking of this in legal terms, and theoretical terms, and suddenly that judge was looking out at 150 children. And that judge realized it wasn't just the 21. This was the current generation that was being threatened by practices that have been undertaken by the government for over 50 years. So based on the questions that the youth asked, I developed more answers and more games. You have to teach kids with games. And ultimately ended up with this teaching that is perfect right now for COVID, for schools offline, for online schools, for stay at home. I could, set up webinars and teach this. That's one, I just all of a sudden spontaneously thought of that. So this is how I get myself in trouble. But anyway, the idea is that these lessons are online for free. And it's not just for kids, because Reagan took out civics. We have had over a generation of adults who have not grown up with basic understanding of how to create new fundamental rights, how to use our rights to defend what we love. How do you do this? And artificial persons, public trust doctrine, nobody has any idea. So, take a breath of air. Did you pay for that? No, that's because air we own in common, and there's a reason for that. So we need to go back to our past, remember kind of what we had to get to our future that we're planning. We can't get to a sustainable future without a functioning democracy. That really is the bottom line. So that's the Ultimate Civics website, and you will find middle school lessons and high school lessons. And I'm in the process of rescaling everything, spiraling it, so we actually have K to 12. And that will be probably by the end of this year. But anyway, on the alert project side, which is the other hat I wear as a PhD marine toxicologist, I'm very concerned about these chemical dispersants that are used in oil spill response. Now, I call this a back-end approach because the oil industry shouldn't even be able to, it cannot lease and develop without a functioning oil spill contingency plan. So they have to have some way that they're going to clean it up. It's like a public contract. You let us drill for oil, we'll promise to clean it up. Well, turns out what they're using to clean up is based on 26-year-old science. That's like last century. It's so far back that it's not even relevant. And that old science is what allows this very toxic chemical dispersant, like what they used in the BP disaster, those planes flying over. And it actually has been found now in scientific studies does more harm than good. Okay, great. Well, the wheels of justice turn very slowly, as Martin Luther King said. So what can we do now to hasten this along a little bit? And that's where we get to maybe the petition and the resolution. So I'm going to take a breath and ask you if you had a question in here. I'm sure we'll get to it.
Well, we were the question was going to be what's next for you, but you have pretty much outlined an incredible agenda. So my next question is, how can our audiences support your work?
Okay, well, good, because that allows me to talk a little bit more about the petition. So there is a petition for people to just click and sign. Well, you better read it first. That talks about, it's an appeal. It's a goodwill appeal to Bill and Melinda Gates to help us stop the use and manufacture of these toxic chemical dispersants in oil spill response. Why Bill and Melinda Gates? Turns out Bill and Melinda Gates are the biggest shareholders of the holding company that makes these toxic dispersants. So it's a goodwill appeal. I'm just saying, help. Here's what you might not have known. This is what this does. So that's a pretty easy thing for people to help with. And then we're going to be running it through the film screening, and then we'll see where from there. But at some point, I'm going to send it to Bill Gates and Melinda. The second thing, if you want to go a little deeper, especially if you live in a coastal community or a community that depends for its resources and its people who work on a coast, you might want to look at how to pass a resolution through your city council. We have resolution templates to basically strengthen local oil spill response and get rid of these toxic chemical dispersants. So I'm not waiting for a lawsuit. I have filed a lawsuit against EPA, but you know, it's a cumbersome process, and there's things that we can be doing locally to update our national emergency response plans for how we're going to deal with disasters in our own backyards.
And we unfortunately will need that preparedness because, as you point out, wherever there are drills, there are spills.
Yep.
So, Ricky, thank you so very much. And I know that people who are watching this right now can't wait to see Concerned Citizen. So please remember, go to our website, peacefilmfest.org, look for the watch tab and find this film and watch it. The festival begins September 21st, runs through October 4th. If there's a question that you would like to ask Ricky, we do have a website, on our website, set up a Google form called Submit a Filmmaker Question. All we need is a film title, your question, your name, your email, and we will facilitate that discussion because we know in these socially distant times that we don't have the opportunity for in-person Q&A, but we're using this to facilitate that. So please do check out that Google form on our website. We also have an impact survey. If you are inspired to take action, please let us know. Let us know on social media. Check out our resources tab where we will have links to the items that Ricky mentioned so that you can dig in more deeply. And again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the festival, and we will see you at the Global Peace Film Festival. Thank you.